Yeah, so it's kind of it's an interesting world right now, especially the holiday time, right? So I'll give you one of my little things that happened here. Florida, as you know, is like we're, I guess, number 3 now. We took over where Texas was, as far as the number of states with problems. And so this past week in the 4th of July, of course, they closed the beaches in Miami and Fort Lauderdale and Palm Beach. So all the interviews you saw in the news, of course, don't know that I can believe those either, but our people were leaving anyway to go on vacation. So they're coming to the beaches over on the West Coast or coming here, Central Florida, the East Coast, and just bring where the biggest problem we had in the state was around the state. I kind of said in a weird way, it's like, wouldn't it be better to like leave their beaches open and close ours? I mean, it's kind of crazy, but
I guess that's the thing. Like, are people that close together at the beach? I know from some photos it looks crazy crowded, and maybe it's, I don't know if it's that or if it's the angle of the photo, but isn't being outdoors a lot better than being, in shared spaces indoors?
Well, we didn't go over the holiday weekend intentionally, okay, but we were there a couple of weeks ago, and it was totally fine. So all of you probably know Jack Lee, the haiku master for Data Essential. Jeff Sanilli, bottom right, CEO and Chief Vibe Officer for Witch, and founder of Sanilli Concepts. He'll talk more about the other ones you can see in the background there. Matt Harding is the Senior VP of Culinary and Menu Innovation for Piade Italian Street Food, and Jennifer Rolander, who's a VP of Business Development for Tucson China. I'll give a shout out to Bill Burden, too, their president. I hope he's on today.
Oh, he is. He's listening. He's listening in the car right now.
So, Jack, why don't we start with you? You've got some news to talk about with our competition.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go so far as to call it news, but I guess we could use that word. So, we had a little bit of a contest starting a couple of webinars ago, where a few of you used our Food Studio software to create new menu ideas. So, just as a reminder, this is something where you could create a new dish, an appetizer, a beverage, a sandwich, you name it, and it gives you instant feedback. So if we were saying we wanted to create a lemon chicken panini with, I'm terrible at this go, with aioli, cucumber, slaw, etc. It'll start sort of grading your dish as you create it, gives you all the trends around it. So many of you created dishes using this. And the idea was, what can you create that's going to have a high combination of consumer appeal and also have some degree of uniqueness too? So we took the creations that you made and we then ran it through our Scores program. And Scores is basically every new item and limited time offer at chain restaurants or major chain restaurants scored by consumers for purchase intent, uniqueness, you name it. And we concept tested the ideas that were generated by you in Food Studio and compared them to the universe of all other new menu launches to see how well they did. And I thought maybe what we could do is we could show you a few of the submissions right now. I'm going to do this in Zoom. Let's see. I'm going to unshare my screen. So I'm going to do a quick poll. And this is going to be for you all to vote on. So it's probably going to take like maybe a minute for you to read through them. But here are 6 of these submissions. And I want you to pick, for you personally, which one of these. So make sure you read all of these first. But which one of these is the thing that you find to be most personally awesome? The descriptions are sort of long, so you'll probably need a minute to read through all of them. You get to pick one. And then we'll see how you vote and how that compares with what consumers thought too. So again, take your time to read through all of them. There's some really great ideas in here. It is sort of interesting, Kevin, to sort of see the chef's perspective on this versus what the typical consumer might vote on.
Yeah, that will be interesting. And also, they're so different and unique.
They are.
Compare one to the other at all.
And I will say, it is not exactly an apples to apples, because what you're doing is you're just picking your one favorite, and whereas the actual Scores testing is Each consumer sees the item by itself and then rates it on uniqueness, purchase intent, frequency, which is would you have it all the time, draw, which is would you make a special trip for it, and some other metrics too. So this is not exactly the same thing, the Zoom poll that we're doing right now versus, actual hard research.
So how do you give that a weight? So is it you get X number of points for uniqueness when when a consumer?
No. So basically, you see the item and then you're asked, how likely you're to order this? Would you definitely order it? Probably. Would you probably not order it, etc. How unique do you think this is? And you sort of individually rate each item in isolation by itself, and then across all the different ratings, hundreds of thousands of people, you can sort of see what really creeps up in preference. So what's interesting here, and maybe, I don't know if the panelists can actually see the poll results, in this forum, so the people that are in this webinar that are voting right now, there is an absolute clear winner on this list. So I guess there's something on this list that feels more chefy than the other ones. I don't know if that's even a word.
It is a word.
Yeah. Can you all guess which one this community is voting for most? I'm floored that it's so heavily weighted toward one particular item.
I'm sure it's one of the fried chicken items, but I didn't go for that.
It's a poultry product, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Maybe. I can see
That's a solid maybe.
So, okay, so let's just quiz the panelists. Jennifer, any guesses? So don't tell me what you like the best. What do you think the community here liked the best?
It was the burnt ends I thought was interesting.
Okay. Matt?
I'm going to go with chicken taco, crispy chicken taco.
All right. Kevin?
I would say, knowing this group, I'm saying burnt ends. That's what I would think.
All right. And Jeff? Oh, you're muted, Jeff. Sorry.
Yeah, totally. It's 100% burnt. You had me at burnt.
So you were all pretty good. So let's take a look at the results.
Yeah.
Look at this.
Yeah.
Clear winner. Yeah. Burnt ends by a mile. So that is not necessarily what consumers told us, right? So I'll show you the consumer results over here. Let me share my screen out. So what we did is, here are the four major metrics that we included in this test: purchase intent, uniqueness, frequency, would you have it all the time, and draw, would you make a special trip for it? But we scored this on just two metrics: purchase intent, uniqueness, and they combined to give us a final score. And based on that, these are the rankings. And you can see that they've all done quite well, right? So you have a number of items that have really strong uniqueness or really great purchase intent, and many that actually have a really awesome combination of both. In fact, these all do much better than the average item. So these are all winners in that regard. But it was actually the chicken parm poutine that sort of did the best overall. It had strong uniqueness, a really strong uniqueness, and it had strong purchase intent too. The burnt ends, super, super unique, but perhaps a little too chefy in a way, where the typical consumer isn't quite ready for it yet, or maybe doesn't quite understand what it is yet. I think that's the case of the pork cutlet and kimchi slaw and a Belgian waffle. Probably one of the most unique items we've ever seen, right? It has 100 on uniqueness, but it needs to find an audience still. Great for this community, but probably more of a specialty application on menus with the general consumer audience. So I think, Kevin, you offered to open up your, I forget the term we keep using, your stash of amazing, trinkets over the history of ICCA. And Jennifer, you were actually the winner, and you happen to be on our webinar right now as a panelist. So
I love it.
So congrats on the poutine.
Thank you.
Flying now, so you have to drive to Orlando, Florida.
All right, I'm jumping in the car as we speak.
Yeah, but I will say everyone came up with great stuff. So you figure an average in any one of these categories is a 50 for any metric.
Oh,
and
wow.
all these things scored way above average in a way that is far better than a normal item. So, and remember, you're comparing not against other ideas that people have had. These are comparisons with other things that have actually launched on menus. the things that you created with Food Studio scored better than the majority of things that have actually launched at restaurants.
Jennifer, you missed your calling.
Yeah.
I know. See,
So
I'm
you
hanging
will-
around all these chefs. I need to just go to school.
We'll send you an extra heavy, extra thick, extra hot chef jacket tomorrow.
Anybody?
Yeah. Well,
Uh-oh.
oh, I'm here. Cool.
Back.
Congratulations again. You all did fantastic, and congrats, Jennifer. You
Thank
get to pick out the prize.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, Kevin, I don't know if you want to help us get started with today's.
Yeah, so why don't we,
conversation.
let's get started here. I think, Jeff, if you don't mind, let's start with you, because you've got so much going on, so much on your plate, so many new concepts you're developing during this time. I think it's really interesting to share with all of our members and sponsors kind of where you're at. I mean, personally, individually, corporately, and how you're dealing with all of this.
Yeah, I don't know if we have that much time, but hey, Kevin and ICCA, I can't even get the acronyms right, GCIA, all chefs, man, I miss the culinary side and being in the kitchen, and I miss you guys as groups. So hope everyone's safe. But yeah, Kevin, a lot going on. As we did a little pre-call, I'm very thankful for this time. I feel it's like a gift from the universe for me, for our concepts, for my family, to get in there and do some just stuff that I wanted to do. And I found myself really working in the business, and now it gave me the opportunity to work on the business. And we've got a bunch of businesses. Our largest business is Which. And we started a little bit of Which 2.0 prior to COVID, but it really allowed us to focus and accelerate it. And we started demolition on our 16-year-old original store on Monday. So we predict a 90-day build out, and we have Which 2.0. And with that, there were some changes and premises with COVID, but we're in our current concept, sandwiches take anywhere from 4 to 6 minutes to make due to impingement ovens and other processes. We've streamlined it to make a sandwich in less than 60 seconds, a minute to win it. Because I think lunch is very utilitarian. We don't have a lot of time to wait. Delivery drivers don't have time to wait. And if it didn't make us faster, it didn't make us better, it didn't make us more money, I didn't even look at it. And we really are focused on really where the first iteration of Which may be a combustion type engine. The next iteration is an electric car. It's very similar to, the Detroit Automotive to the new Tesla. So we wanted to go current, tech, streamlined, and I'm excited about it. We're nicknaming it. We haven't officially signed off on it, but where Jamba Juice became Jamba, where Dunkin' Donuts became Dunkin', Which is morphing into Which with an explanation point. We're going to stick it. We're going to build thousands of units. And I haven't really talked about that type of development before, because I've always been that person. Let's build like one at a time. Let's but this one's set up to really go. And the development cost is probably the best in the industry. The metrics are going to be the profitability. So, outside of the chef stuff, the conceptual stuff for Which, not to mention the sandwiches are going to be incredible. There's 25 sandwiches that are curated versus, kind of build your own. So we're going to be fast. We're going to be efficient. We're going to have a lot of fun with that. And it also leads into our other brands. Right before COVID, we developed the sister to our Berg Gesa, which launched over a decade ago. We decided to give it a sister chicken concept because, where chicken's going nowadays. And it's called Bird Gesa, as the hat symbolizes, and it's simply tenders and tots. And it's a mashup of where Nashville meets Mexican chicken. And instead of the Nashville ladder of 8 to 9 rungs of different mild to hot to extreme to blow your mind, there's only 4 rungs, and it's called Oh Shit, okay? And Oh Shit is the acronym for original, spicy, hot, and then tap out. In the Mexican wrestling world, there's luchadors, and you tap out when it's hot enough. So our extreme will be hot. If you get to that point, you get to wear the championship belt and Instagram and social all over the place. But we got 4 levels. The Mexican chili peppers and beyond are profiled within the heat levels. But the original will stick it to you, middle of the road, 80%. And then you climb our little step ladder of 3 rungs with spicy, hot, and tap out. So we're excited about that. And we chose a potato for the tots. We feel they hold well, they transfer well for delivery. It's tenders and tots, and it's a 2-tender sandwich. So we're playing the sandwich wars. Not really concerned about that, but I think chicken's global and it's very universal. And now with the heat levels not being Nashville, we want to be unique and put a little Mexican spin on it. So that's Birdgesa. And then I had this supernova concept that we were about ready to go 7 figures real deep to build brick and mortars. We put that on the back burner, and we're going to go D2C, direct to consumer online next month with it, with our performance coffee, our A2 butters, and morph into some A2 protein. That's a derivative of the milk proteins of ice creams, and also some oat milk healthy ice creams. But Supernova is my lifestyle coffee performance concept that we just kind of put on the back burner. We're going to focus on which, launch Birdgesa, and still energize ourselves with coffee that you can all buy online. But it's out there. I have a couple shots every morning of Supernova, Clean 15. We've got a Hyper Vanta coffee. Vanta is the darkest black known to man. We call it Vanta. But we got K-Cups. It's going to launch online. We're excited about that too. We haven't even touched our ice cream concept with Pachugo, but we keep building more of those units. So it's a lot going on. But again, I'm very, very thankful to COVID for the time to work on the business, working in the business.
So
Jeff, it's funny you said that. I've been reading about Vanta Black. Isn't that trademarked by someone, and you have to pay a licensing fee to?
Yeah, it's
use
coming
it?
out of the UK. It's some like nanoscientists discovered the darkest color absent. It's like 99.997 absent of light as far as a color.
It's like a black hole, basically.
Yeah, but it's there's no light, so it's dark, and that's our darkest. It's made with a Robusta bean, and you know what? You have one shot. When we first tasted this in our office 2 months ago, or actually it was now 4 months ago, time flies. We had it at about 2:00 in the afternoon because FedEx delivered, and I normally have a cutoff of 2:00 for all caffeine, but there was 5 of us on the Supernova team, and we literally started dancing after one shot at 2:00 in the afternoon. The Vanta is amazing. It'll make you perform on very high levels. Just be careful. I actually tone it down and blend it with our Clean 15 for a 50-50, and I call it Obsessed, which is what I'm obsessed about most of the branding that we do. So
awesome.
I just love the chefs, love you guys. Sorry I'm not wearing a white coat, but I feel you.
Hey, Jeff, on that front, Supernova, you talked to us how many years ago? When did you start that project? Was it 2 or 3 years ago you talked to us about this?
Yeah, it's been gestating. I started drinking coffee 6 years ago and haven't looked back. We had to land on a name, and that's another story. And, we're literally a lot of money into it between buildings and branding. But I felt it was the smart decision for right now not to launch a coffee. We had the best location in downtown Dallas. We had another location in California. And I just said, you know what, let's slow our roll. Let's work on which, because that's very important right now. And by the way, I think there's going to be just choice of real estate as we get into a retail apocalypse right now with the for sale and for lease signs all over the place. So I wanted to be patient and more strategic with it. We're going to come out with it, but I've got work to do on Birdgesa and a lot of work to do on which, and that'll keep me busy through the end of this year. And we're also looking to hire strategic, team members that want to join and grow these brands. So
that's awesome. So Matt, why don't we jump in with you? You guys have really morphed your concept quite a bit in this time, haven't you?
Yeah, it's first, Jeff's a hard act to follow. He's got a lot of stuff going on. We're a fast casual restaurant. We're 40 units, and fortunate that we were in fast casual when this happened, because I think that guests came back to it. I think you had a couple webinars ago. We were talking about some people who showed positive comp sales in April. I think it was a little early for us, but since we've shown positive comp, it's been good for us. The business has come back, but I think the things that we really got out of what has happened is we took a step back and focused on the biggest 3 areas that could make an impact in our business. And for us, it was digital, sanitation, and value. And, for us, sanitation, and Jack had talked a lot about overt sanitation. And I think it's right. You have to create an atmosphere and an environment in which people feel comfortable using, no matter how they're going to use it. So for some people, they'll come in and they won't wear a mask. Now, unfortunately, in a lot of places you have to wear a mask, but there's that level of people. The second level is people will come in with a mask, and then there's the other level where they will order outside your building in their car, curbside, and wait for you to bring it to them, and you have to have a mask and gloves on. And then there's the last piece, which they're the third partiers. They're going to wait for their driver to deliver it to their door, contactless. So focusing on the sanitation, we installed a bevy of ways to sanitize the building. We changed sanitizers inside the building. We've got foam sanitizer. We did a symptom survey. I call him Professor Profit, and he's our IT guru. We actually hacked into, hope no one's up for micros. Aloha. So we actually hacked in and made our screen before you clock in. Turned it into a symptom survey. So we're asking you to self-evaluate your temperature. We're asking you if you've had any symptoms, and if you did, then you couldn't clock in. You had to go see a manager. So throughout the whole process, it's been about keeping not just the guest, but our team members safe. We've tried the whole A/B teams. If there's been any, if there's any illness, that's, I can tell you, is great in theory. And someone who's never worked in a restaurant, been much more difficult to do that. The other thing that we've seen is really the rise of digital. And I remember talking to Jack again several years ago, where he held up the phone and he's like, this is going to be the single most important thing in your restaurant experience at some point. Guests are going to use this versus a menu. And we were going to roll out a menu change a week before COVID hit. We had everything printed, so we had spent the money. Yes, I touched my face. I'm sorry. We had spent the money, and we iced it. We put it on hold, and then we eventually went ahead and we reprinted, because we just had to make some changes in the menu. But we decided not to do paper menus or any menus inside the restaurant. And I don't know if we'll ever see a day where we go back to paper menus. It's the strength of digital, where you can either use a QR code or guests can go onto your website. And what we've seen in adoption, third party obviously took through the roof with COVID happening. That's unquestionable. But what we saw was the AOLers, and we skew slightly older in the Midwest here on some of our guests. And I call them the AOLers because those are the people with the AOL accounts. They didn't go to third party. They didn't download Uber or DoorDash. They went to our website. Yep. All right. So, we actually saw a huge influx of ordering through our website. So again, what we did is we pivoted and we took the resources, and we've actually acquired additional resources to building out our apps that were fairly robust. They were off the shelf. We're doing 100% complete custom apps that'll be done by the end of the year. You can do stored card value. There's going to be some geotagging. So they're going to be fairly robust. And I think the digital space is, if you're not in it, and we weren't in it in a significant way, but that's really, for one thing for us, which we thought if we're going to go in with something, it's going to be in digital. And then the value piece. Value is derived by 100 different ways and 100 different things. It's, hey, is your dumpster door closed? Is your drive-up window glass clean? Is your sanitizer that's outside of your bathroom full? Is do you have fingerprints on your glass? Or all of your staff in masks? And furthermore, when you turn your back, do they have it over their nose? It's getting those behaviors and getting our teams to understand that is mission one critical to go back to drive trust with the guest. So all of these three things, value, digital, and sanitation, are overarching. just driving the trust with the guest. Because if you don't have the trust of the guest right now, you don't have a brand. And those are the things that we're focused on every single day. We thought the protein apocalypse was going to happen, the protein prices spiking. They've kind of managed and mitigated themselves throughout the process. We saw some pork go up, but poultry surprisingly wasn't bad. So it's those three things, and if you can keep those messages short, tight, concise, and you're only saying a few things versus 100 things to your team on a regular basis, you have a much better chance of those things sticking and making an impact in the guest. And one more thing I do want to say is that we had made a decision early on to keep the restaurants open, and to if we lost money, we were going to lose money, because for us it was more important. And it goes way back to our CEO and our founder, Chris, his mom. I worked for her back in 1993, and there was one day that no one could make it to the restaurant. It was such a bad snowstorm in Columbus, Ohio. And she personally called me and she said, "Hey, Matt." I said, "Yeah." "Sue?" And she goes, "No one can make it into work. Can you go down and open the restaurant so that people can come in?" And that's that kind of mentality where, you don't ever give up. You just don't. You don't give up the wheel. You don't give up the wheel to the ship to anybody else. If you're going to captain it, you're in it. So those are the focuses for us.
Yeah, Matt, that is awesome. And I actually want to touch on three things you mentioned. The first was that piece about trust. So we actually just finished a new piece of research looking at the top 200 chains, a new set of metrics that sort of are the product of COVID. It's, do you trust this place to keep you safe? Do you trust that they're sanitizing to the highest level, highest standards? Do you believe that they're doing good things for their community? Do they have food that you think is good for takeout versus delivery? All these sort of new things that became important. And I was sort of amazed at how wide the variance in the scores were. Like, there's some things where I'm like, oh yeah, most chains will probably be about the same there. Not at all. I mean, there is a lot of variance, and there's a lot of nuance too. There's differences in how people will rate you for, I trust this place to keep me safe, versus I trust this place is sanitizing to the highest standard. There's actually a nuance where that means different things. But you actually said two other things that I'd love to hit on, and this is for everybody to chime in on. I guess the first is around masks and customers, and the second is around third party and the economics of that and what it means in the age of COVID. But if we could start with the mask thing, and this may be a simpler question. What is the right approach or best practice for customers coming in if, let's say, they're not wearing a mask? The thing that we know from the research is that consumers are more scared of other people in the restaurant than they are the staff or the restaurant itself. So if someone comes in without a mask on, it's actually not just them. It's like thought that they might be, making other people in the restaurant nervous. What's the best way of dealing with that in states where masks aren't mandatory yet, let's say?
I can speak for there's been a couple counties in Ohio that have mandated masks, and we're being asked to police the guest. Yep. And at a certain point, I think it can harm our relationship with the guest. But the other thing is, you have to understand, this isn't our decision. We're going to create an environment that's safe for you as best we can. But if the governor decides that you're going to wear a mask, we respect that you don't want to wear one, but we're not going to serve you. And we're really sorry about that. Yep. But that's just what we're expected to do.
So that I get. How about if you're in the stores in an area where masks are not mandatory, but encouraged, and someone comes in without a mask? What's the right way of dealing with that from a guest experience perspective? I don't know what the answer to that is.
It's so new right now that, Jack, I think you're right. We don't have the answer. We're in the hospitality business, and we're here to serve. I think behind, as the brand, you want to show that you're protected with masks and sanitation and the perceived sanitation of, and that's where I think our responsibility is. I have a tough time getting my arms around policing guests, and I just because we live in the United States. There's a lot of freedom. There's a lot of opinion. We we had some of because our footprint's over in 30 states. You know, there was a couple operators that didn't adopt masks, and the customers were then vocal. So it's like there's tension right now, and I think it's just the climate we're in. It's going to work itself out to best practices. I think, I tell my team we're going to be one of the last companies probably to stop wearing masks if we have to.
Yeah.
But it's masks are the new underwear. It's
Jeff, on that front,
That's a good quote. Yeah.
on your doors at all that say masks are requested, or we prefer you to wear masks? Do you do that?
I think we have an array from mandatory to preferred, and I'm seeing that as I'm in California now, and Texas is a little bit more forgiving, but it's just it's really like I've got an 8 and an 11-year-old. They don't leave without the house without wearing a mask, and you got to put yourself in their perspective. Okay, they're 8 and 11. Okay, they're not 60 plus 70 in a class that could be endangered. Not that, but look, if an 11 and an 8-year-old think it's common sense to wear a mask,
yeah,
I think let's follow their lead. That's where I'm
it's
at.
funny. I remember back in the 80s, I could swear I saw most restaurants had a sign that said something to the effect of like no shirts, no shoes, no service.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I don't know if this is that version of that. Then it gets me thinking like, who the heck were these people going to restaurants with no shirts or no shoes back then? Well, I don't see that happening today. Was that like a rampant thing back in the 80s? I don't know.
You didn't live in Florida.
Yeah.
We're Southern Cal.
Yeah. The other question is around third party, right? So I think, Matt, you said, a lot of business is sparked by third party and then more coming in through your website now. I think that's actually true of a number of brands. It's a little bit easier for chains if you can sort of negotiate with the marketplace and get a better rate or a fee. It's really tough for independents that are paying, let's say, 28% plus all the other things. And we know that consumers are ordering mostly like the highest food cost items on the menu. They're veering towards entrees and not so much appetizers and beverages where you have more margin. Can you be profitable with third party in the long run? Or is this just sort of a stopgap to keep business healthy, during this time? It's maybe a general question for the industry, but
Matt,
for independents, it seems like it's very, very tough.
Well, when you've got a mix, right? When you've got a mix of catering and full price, no discount when a guest comes into your restaurant, and then you have some third party, that's one of the pieces that all equates into the number of profitability. But when you remove your highest margin parts of your business, and all you have is your worst parts of your business, you're writing big checks. Now, do you do it to stay in business? Absolutely. Do you do it to service the guest? Absolutely. Would you choose to start and run a business long term that way? Absolutely not. You could find a lot easier ways to make money than that way.
Yeah.
So
the interesting thing, it seems like no one's actually really making money with third party right now, including the third party marketplaces themselves. Consumers are complaining about fees. Operators are complaining about fees. The profit's not flowing to the third party marketplace. Is this actually sustainable the way it is right now, or?
I think you're going to see it. You've seen a lot of consolidation, right?
Yeah.
And the big question is, there were some questions in the trades whether consolidated third party was still going to be profitable,
right?
For restaurants and for themselves. I don't know what the answer is. I think that it's an evolving model. It's become such a big player for us in such a short period of time, and I do think that ingenuity has a part to play in it, and we'll figure out something. But I think it'll be a part of the business moving forward.
I feel like we're going to see another type of service emerge that could challenge the existing third-party marketplaces. There's going to be some new invention, and I think you're going to see a number of restaurants, probably mostly starting with independents first, that will defect from some of the third-party marketplaces just because they're not making money in a lot of those cases right now. And maybe there's another way of doing this. It'll be interesting though. But I don't think we've seen the final business model yet. It's yet to come.
Agreed. I've got a follow-up question to Matt and Jeff. So, and not percentage, because I know third party is still a decent percentage because of where we are today. But from a dollar volume, has it stayed the same and the other businesses have picked up? or is third party increased a lot in the last 3 months or so?
Jeff, you want to take that?
Oh, you're muted there, Jeff. Sorry.
Mute.
We've seen third party pick up, just as a convenient avenue to order. We've also seen direct, right through our website, and that's where we really want to shine. The profitability's there, but customers want the shortest distance between two lines. I'm surprised, Matt, that they can still get through with an AOL address anywhere, but that's another story. My mother-in-law still has one, so
Hey, I just opened one last week. Don't pick on
AOL.
me. Yes, Black Socks and Birkenstocks at AOL.com.
Yeah, I'm thinking about maybe I should get one and a pair of Pro Keds as well. But hey, Kevin, I think the answer is there's a lot of ways to get your food delivered. Right now, even if you look at home grocery, whether you're using Amazon or Instacart or the Whole Foods app, I mean, we're finding it, and they're like, you got to pick the channel that works for you, whether it's an aggregator. Jack, I think you're right. There's going to be somebody's going to crack the model, because the model right now is broken on both ends, and that's not sustainable. And as soon as Patrick Doyle, the ex-CEO of Domino's, told me point blank, he said the aggregators right now are the greatest extinguishers of private equity money right now that he's ever seen. And I think that's sooner or later that bubble's going to burst and the money's going to run out, because it's just not sustainable. And it's just the model that everyone's complaining about, like was referenced earlier in this call.
Yeah, I'm sure you'd love to sell some more beverages, right, with your third-party orders or with your delivery orders in general, right? I'm guessing beverage incidence is significantly lower for those orders than it is in store.
In our space, fountain is king. There's ways to seal cups, taken from the boba tea industry and beyond.
Yep.
So soda's getting sealed. You cannot buy right now half gallons or gallons through Uline or other things because they're sold out. Volume of packaging is king right now, if you're going to bottle your own beverages at a local level. So, but it has to be safe and sealed, and it has to be able to and not spill during transportation.
Yeah, and that's the thing, saying when you ask consumers what's the number one reason you don't order a beverage with your delivery order, it's because, I already have beverages in my fridge at home. So the answer, I think, is offer beverages that they don't already have in their fridge at home and do sort of more inventive stuff. You think we'll see sort of an uptick in innovation in the beverage space directly as a result of this? It seems like it's an opportunity.
Well, one of the big things that's cracked during this COVID is liquor laws that were restricted to within the perimeter of your license have now been just opened up or bootlegged, so to speak. So the ability to get margaritas and things that you don't make at home per se with a blender or a frozen drink, I think that's a big opportunity. Again, it's unique beverages. You can get water out of your faucet at home. Probably bottled water is the same, but to get a unique beverage, that's why you're going.
Yeah, totally agree.
Kevin, to add on to that too is, there are places, that you can now walk down the street. So if you can walk to a restaurant to pick something up, you can get the margarita, walk back home, and drink while you walk down the street. I mean, that's obviously something that hadn't happened here since before Prohibition.
Can you do that in Orlando?
You can in Florida, yeah. It's
wow. Everything's turned into Vegas all of a sudden. That's sort of cool. Yeah.
So anecdotally, I also oversee a fine dining restaurant for the family. And it's the first time in 40 years that liquor sales have ever eclipsed wine sales by dollar volume. So good news for Jennifer. She's got glassware.
Yeah, let's.
Jack, I think it speaks to what you and Jeff were talking about is everyone has had their fill of a bottle of wine. That was their go-to in the first 4 months.
Yep.
Now they want occasion. They want celebration.
Yeah.
They want to feel special because they've been on bread and water diet for so long. And that's the opportunity that restaurants, tableware companies, anybody can offer to the guest as a respite from the reality, which is this isn't going away anytime soon. Everybody's fighting about it. And, you know, frankly, we're going up till November. This is going to be front page till November.
Well, great segue, Matt, into Jennifer. So Jennifer, let's talk a little bit about you, your company, especially being production and based in China. So talk to us about what's happening in your world, because it's quite unique.
Yes, and it's very different, I know, from all you foodie guys and chefs and, and restaurants, but you know, we supply you guys. So it's been a really interesting time for us. We obviously, when March hit, our sales tanked as well because everything was closed. So, you know, we were only doing about 10% in April. That has changed dramatically. We went up to 30%. Looks like July is on track for 50. So the trajectory is going up, and I think that's just because people are opening and they're looking at different ways to serve. So we're just very fortunate, though, that our factories in China, the family who runs Tuxton owns those factories. So we don't have to outsource any product. And our competitors, that's what they do. A lot of them outsource, and they're getting their product from those other Chinaware facilities that are closed. So we actually never closed. We have two factories, one in Jiamen, China, and one in Hunan. And we did close the larger factory for a little while, but we kept the other one running. And our advantage also is we keep a very large inventory on all of our products. So we have a warehouse in China next to the factory, and then we also have our warehouse in Southern California next to our offices. So we were fortunate to have all that inventory in case orders came in, which they did. Obviously, they weren't a lot, but we could continue to keep a small customer service team going to take those orders, to ship out samples. And then we had a small warehouse team that was shipping out orders. The other thing that we were fortunate that we were able to keep our containers coming over as well. So we didn't have a lag in that. And so we've been able to service a lot of the people in the industry where some others haven't been able to. So we don't have these long 3-month, 6-month wait times. So we've just been very fortunate that our business runs the way it does and that we can control all that.
So, that's fantastic. Have you seen a shift in the mix of products that are selling now, like versus pre-COVID?
I haven't seen anything personally. I do know, though, that our healthcare department, we were continuing to sell a lot of that. And that's one of the reasons we were actually able to stay open, because we supply healthcare. So I know just today we got one of our customers needed a large order of a specific healthcare plate. So, you know, those things are still pumping through. And I think so that is one of those areas that we've continued to grow and continue to service through this.
As menus change, what do you think, Jennifer? So a lot of people are talking about limiting their, you know, the items on their menu. So from your perspective, does that give you more opportunity to sell something that maybe they weren't getting from you before? Or is it going to be just an increased order of the things you've already sold them?
You know, I think it's going to be a mix, because if people are changing up the way they're doing their menus, even if they're not just pulling back, they may be, you know, putting together something totally different. Maybe it's more individualized and there's less sharing, or, you know, I'm not sure what the big deal is going to be for restaurants right now and what those menu items will be. But because we have, you know, we have 1,600 SKUs, over 1,600 SKUs, and we have things that kind of fit into all those different arenas and to all those different types of facilities. So I think we're primed to be able to fit into what any new menu item or what type of popular tabletop it ends up being for whatever facility it is, because we have so many different options available. So I don't see it being a problem.
Awesome. Jack, you had a couple of things you wanted to bring up too. Did you have some slides you wanted to
Yeah, I could. I'd be happy to just take us through a couple of insights. So why don't I share my screen out again? So these are pretty interesting, actually. So one thing that we've seen, and I think this is actually quite fascinating, is in that, you know, first real week of the pandemic, March 10th is really the date when like everything hit the fan. But Leading into that, we asked people where they felt safer eating in a chain restaurant or an independent restaurant. And by a 2-to-1 margin, people said, I think independents are going to be safer than chains. Fast forward 3 months, and you can see that ratio has really started to shift where it's more of a 50-50 now. And I think that's largely because people have had more interaction with chains during the time than they have independents. Traditionally chains are maybe 60-65% of restaurant traffic. During the pandemic, they were like 75-80% of that traffic. So people disproportionately went there. They found places with drive-throughs. They got a little bit more used to it. So that number has moved in a pretty substantial way in a fairly short period of time. This is an interesting chart too. This shows what people think is risky in terms of ways of getting food, right? And in the green line is people's perspectives on March 13th and June 9th, so 3 months later is in blue. And you can see that the percentage of people that think that drive-through or takeout or delivery is risky really dropped pretty considerably. But the things where you're around other people, like a cafeteria serving line or being in a salad bar style restaurant or being at a soup bar at a grocery store, there we didn't see any sort of a decline. So people got used to drive-through, takeout, delivery, and we had a big drop there in perceived risk. But the stuff where you're physically around other people, that's where people say this is just as risky as it's always been. And we also asked people, what would make you more comfortable in a place like a restaurant, right? So again, the green line is early March, the blue line is early June, and you can start seeing where you have some separation, right? So here are some areas where people said, well, this would really make me feel a lot more comfortable in March. And by the time we got to June, they're saying, yeah, that'd still make me feel pretty comfortable, but not as much so, right? They're still important, but they're not as critically needed as, let's say, they were before, right? So at the early days, we didn't know very much about COVID. And it's like, oh, I don't even want to eat food if the ingredients come from places that likely have, COVID in the area. Well, now every place has COVID in the area, so that's not a big concern anymore. The regular wiping down of surfaces, still really important, but not as important as it was in the early days. And you can see some of the other areas where the importance has dropped a little bit. But the stuff that has become more important are these, right? The ability to order via phone app and to have more distance between tables. That's where things have actually trended up. So I think, Matt said it well, that we saw an acceleration of technology that COVID brought about. And I think the lasting things that we're going to see out of this are, what are things that would have happened anyways and that have now been accelerated permanently by virtue of COVID? Order ahead is certainly a big example of that. Take a look at how people's concerns about what's safe has changed too. Again, March versus June. In March, it was really about avoiding things that other people have touched. By the time we got to June, it became about just avoiding being close to other people. We went from surface to air, so to speak, was the transition, which is pretty big, right? In just 3 months, we've completely changed our perception of what's actually risky inside of a place like a restaurant. And I think we're going to see a number of things continue to be really important coming out of this. So here the question is, what do consumers want to see continue even after COVID? And you can see the numbers for both limited service and full service. Perhaps one of the great innovations from COVID is curbside, right? This is a very uncommon thing prior to the pandemic. It's quite common now, and it's likely to stick around too. So this might be one of those things that actually helps us pick up a couple of points of share in the long run if we continue offering curbside and we continue to do it well. I always found it sort of curious that we didn't have more walk-up windows in this country, right? You go to like Miami, you have a lot of like cafe, Miami Cuban restaurants that have like a walk-up window. You can get your coffee, you can get your Cuban lunch or what have you. Relatively rare at other restaurants throughout the country, but we've seen a number of places basically discover, hey, I actually have a window I can just sort of open that thing up and take orders over there. They do that at the Hattie B's here in Nashville, along with many other restaurants around the country. Hopefully that sticks around too. The more ways we can give people access to order and get food in a way that's convenient, the better that is. So I would say, you know, for your operation, is that something you might be able to do or continue doing if you're already doing that? And we talked about the surface to air thing. Right now, it really is the story of air. What do you think is the main source of contracting coronavirus? People think it's more about breathing in other people's air than it is about touching stuff. So this is why you see in the numbers that masks are thought to be much more important than gloves. That said, your staff had better wear both. Consumers have an absolute expectation that that's what they're going to see. I will say something. I probably shouldn't say this, but hey, you're all friends. I did not realize this personally until some time back. You know, I do a fair number of just, you know, speaking engagements throughout the year back when we used to do live events. And you're standing there on stage and you have like a, you know, bright light hitting you. And basically you just look out into a sea of darkness. And when that's the case, as you're talking, I noticed for myself, I would just see like little granules of spit just like fly out of my mouth every now and then. They'd be like backlit by that spotlight. I'm like, this is utterly disgusting. I had no idea. I was just literally just like spitting all over the place pretty much every time I opened my mouth. I'm like wondering, like, can people in the audience see all the just spit flying everywhere? You should try that experiment at home. Like, just turn the lights off, hold a flashlight up right in front of your face, and just start talking at full volume and see if you start seeing little particles of spit fly around. And if you do, that's a pretty good reason why masks are actually quite important. So I can totally relate to this consumer sentiment that it's the breathing in of air that we need to be most worried about. It is interesting, though, that you see a split in this between generations, that boomers are heavily likely to think that this is an air thing, right? Much more so than Gen Z. Gen Z, on the other hand, a lot of them think that you can actually get COVID by eating food, right? 28% of Gen Zers think that this is the most, you know, transmissible way of getting COVID versus just 6% of boomers. The surface thing is sort of neutral, right? There's not a big generational difference there, but there is differences in the perception of air and eating. So I'm happy, you know, for our next webinar, I'll probably share a few more stats, but that's just something to think about. If there's one thing to take home with you today, tonight, when it's late and it's dark, do the flashlight thing, just start talking, and let us know next time if you're like me and you just basically are spitting everywhere and just never realized it, because that was an utter shock to me. I thought I was being particularly disgusting, but I'm coming to realize that I'm not alone in the world where we just have problems with expectorating all around us. So Kevin, I will kick that back to you on that lovely note.
Hey, as we get ready to close out here, Jeff, you made a comment yesterday that I thought was amazing about your forward thinking. And you did an analogy about being in rough weather and buckling down. I thought was something to be awesome to share with everybody.
Yeah, I make a lot of analogies. That might have been the soup du jour, but you know, I don't have a reverse in me. At least I don't think I'd like to have a reverse. I like to go forward. And with that, you know, I'm just always looking for the opportunities to whether it's where the puck's going to go or where the open space is to score a goal. And I think COVID has given us the opportunity again to be very patient in our business and be very strategic looking forward. I call it the weather out there. The economy's the weather, and it's going to clear up. But during this storm, those that are prepared for the storm are going to get through it. Those that weren't prepared, you know, it's the law of nature is going to play itself out, and it's just the way it is. It's like prepare for a rainy day is the old adage my grandparents used to give me. So, you know, I've been through a couple. Maybe a couple roller coaster rides in business, and you know, we prepared for this, and so we're real calm going through it. And I know a lot of people are freaking out, and I really feel for that too, because I've been there before. But I wanted to say that I know that, you know, you have to have that hope that it's going to get better. We're going to have new record highs in food sales, and you know, life's a roller coaster ride. And for me, I enjoy the ups and downs, and I'm like a kid. Let's do it again. And that's how I kind of approach life and business. This is just a roller coaster ride, and we may be right in the middle of an upside down corkscrew right now. Maybe we vomited, maybe it's bad, but it's you know what? We're still smiling. It's not going to kill it. Well, let's be cautious about what we say about that, but it's we're going to get through this, and we're going to be smarter, more knowledgeable. And I always look for the bright spots, the forward looking stuff. And that's where I kind of approach life and business.
That's awesome. Matt, do you have any final thoughts there?
No, I agree with Jeff. I mean, there'll always be opportunities for companies that are well prepared. Sometimes moving forward is flattening your organization, making the few things that you feel matter most primary concerns for everybody, so everybody has that same thought. The future is from our standpoint is going to be different. It's digital, and you talked about, Kevin, ease of use and finding easy ways for people to use you. That's what we should all be focused on right now, is how do we get guests comfortable using us as frequently as possible, and that's the win.
That's awesome. Jennifer, before you get to your final thoughts on that, you said something before that I really thought was quite amazing, is that your plants in China, you use almost U.S. regulations, even though it's not the norm there, but you have that kind of standard set in your plants. And I thought that was pretty cool. If you want to expand on that a little.
Yeah, we do. It's like we took a U.S. plant, dropped it into China. I mean, we've had everybody wearing masks. Most of them do anyway, just because it's China ware and it's a lot of dust. So we have a lot of sustainability practices we use for our workers there. We have anywhere from 500 to 1,000 people at one time. We have dormitories for them, and we have a lot of great programs for them and green spaces and things like that. But it's very important to the family, because they live here in the U.S., that we expand those same procedures into China. So it's an important thing. And then as far as just ending the day, I'm of the same mind. I'm very fortunate to be with an amazingly positive sales team, and all of our rep groups are very positive. And, that's what it's been from the beginning. We're just going to keep forward and keep moving forward and keep doing what we do best. And that's China. That's what we do best. And we're just going to keep doing that and working together with the industry and get through this. And whatever changes that means, I think they're all going to be for the positive. I think we all need to just have that really positive outlook and just keep moving forward. Like Jeff said, that's the way to do it.
Awesome. And Jack, before I thank everyone and we end this, you want to mention too, I know you moved your dates for your webinars you've been doing every Friday, and it's tomorrow, I believe, right?
Oh yeah, we used to do webinars every Friday. We've moved to every other Thursday starting tomorrow, and we're bringing in our first ever guest onto the podcast outside of Data Central. That's Eve Terrell-Pauls, who just wrote a book on basically food and what's happening with the current generation, and anxiety, depression, tech addiction, how that all translates into new types of food experiences and behaviors in that generation. So we can get into the psychology of people and how that manifests in what they do with food. It's going to be really, really interesting. So join us at noon Central tomorrow. If you haven't signed up yet, you can go to datacentral.com and sign up there. If you have signed up for our webinar series, you probably still have a Friday invite on your calendar, and the Zoom does not allow us to change that, unfortunately. So please do not tune in on Friday. Tune in tomorrow at noon instead, and then wait 2 weeks and do it again at the same time. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thanks to everybody who's been on today, our sponsors, members, really appreciate that. Jennifer, Matt, Jeff, Jack, thank you so much for making this a very special time in our week. And we're same thing here. We're continuing on every other Wednesday. And we're booked now all the way through. If you sign up once, you're booked through the end of, or the 19th, I think is the last one in August. And then at that point, we're going to continue this series. So there'll be more information about that. But we have several more weeks coming up, and look forward to that. Any kind of information that you feel like you'd like to hear on these webinars or these Zoom meetings, please let us know, because we'd be happy to incorporate that into it. But thanks again, everybody out there. Just let's keep continuing forward with a positive attitude, as everybody talked about today, and make our business and make the customers out there happier. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye-bye.